Hey guys, welcome back to the Coffee and Cannoli podcast. Once again, we are joined by the man who needs no introduction, the man who's always about that high score, the Gamerpothead himself, Puttyman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it.
Welcome back to my channel, Putty.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I loved the last one. It was fun. It felt like ages ago.
Right?
Yeah,
Great
right.
secret. I still got that bee sting on my cheek.
Yeah, that's been a while, bro. It's been a while. Wait, I'm wearing the same clothes, I think, too.
I think so too. Yeah, right. So this episode is an episode that is about a console that's near and dear to our hearts. We did our Sega Genesis, we did arcades, we did the SNES, and now we're going to be doing the Sega Saturn, an overlooked console of the late 90s, mid to late 90s that didn't get a lot of love. The first disc-based console.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't for the Saturn 3DI and was it the 3DO and the CDI?
Yeah, they're talking about the Panasonic. Oh no, the Panasonic 3DO, and then the what was it?
This Philips
CDI was that's right.
So like it was one of the first base. It was the first one with expandable memory. Right. So there was a lot of things about this console that were overlooked, but it was launched wrong. And then once the PlayStation came out, it was game over for Sega. The Dreamcast never fulfilled its true potential. So we're going to start with the system that launched it all, with the Sega Saturn. Much loved in my book. We're going to do our top 5 Saturn games. We're going to get into some honorable mentions. And we're going to get into, some of our fond memories about Sega and games of yore. So we're going to start with our number 5. Puttyman, I'm going to have you go first.
Okay, so my number 5, unfortunately, when it comes to Sega, they always have their flagship character, Sonic, on there. And unfortunately, we didn't really have that. But they did have a game that was competing with another Nintendo franchise. And I loved it, but people hated it. And that is Sonic R. Sonic R was one of those games that nobody liked. It was bad, okay? Don't get me wrong. It did have its horrible moments. But there was something about it that made me addicted, because I always thought, if Sonic was in a Mario Kart game, he would not need a cart. He would just run on his own. And so that they finally kind of did that. Outside of Robotnik having his vehicle, which made sense anyway. It wasn't really that great of a game. I'll admit, it wasn't that great of a game. But the reason I had to put it as my number 5 is because it was more the nostalgia feels, and because it was so different. Because like the music itself alone caught me, like I had to play it all the time.
Sonic games have always had good music.
Yes. And I mean, that's my whole point, is I love Sonic R, even though a lot of people hate it. I can't say that it's a great game, like a superb, phenomenal game. Right. But for a Sonic fan, it was the only thing I felt we had outside of Sonic 3D Blast, which I already played on Sega Genesis. So it was kind of like, I had to put my boy Sonic on there. So that's why.
Well, that's the thing. Sonic, like the Sonic franchise on the Saturn, was kind of more played towards the nostalgia with Sonic Jam.
Yep. I remember,
which was like the collection of all the old Sonic games.
Yep, which is like their own Super Mario All-Stars, basically.
But up textured a little bit, and it was like widescreen. Like this thing had widescreen if you had an S cable. Like it was unheard of back then.
Well, it was like right prior to that, we got Knuckles Chaotix. So I was hoping for something a little more newer and everything, which we didn't get it. So that's why Sonic R did fill in that spot for me. But luckily, because we still have a list, there was another game that came out that was later on my list that basically filled in that spot and was like
filled that void.
Yeah, it was that Saturn flagship in my eyes, which I'm guessing it'll probably be on your list too. It might not.
We'll see. It may be an honorable mention. We don't know each other's lists, so we're going into this cold.
Yeah, we make this a fun and surprising for each other as well.
For my number 5 is a franchise that was never known for Sega. It was always known for Nintendo. Is Mega Man 8.
Oh yes. I remember this being on there, and it was an amazing game still. But
it was a fantastic game. Obviously, everyone's familiar with the Mega Man series. The textures, the colors were so bright in this game. This was the first Mega Man game that had full motion anime, basically. Like the cutscenes in between were like watching the Mega Man anime. The voice acting, on the other hand, was not the greatest. Everybody remembers Dr. Wily. Right?
Well, it's the translation, but I will say, just to jump in, there was the whole fascination of Mega Man X as well. So it was nice to see them still going back to the old Mega Man that we found fondly in Nintendo.
Because they put X4 on the Saturn as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt like that there was a shadow, but yeah, I'm so glad you put that on your list because I didn't even think about it because I think I played it on another console. I can't remember exactly if it was another one or not, but I do remember that, and I
It
remember
was on the
going up with
PS, the PlayStation as well.
that might have been where I played it. I might not have played it on the Saturn. I might played on that, yeah. So, but
And
yeah,
I think the Nintendo 64 may have had it, but without the cutscenes.
I don't remember to be honest.
I could be mistaken, but I just remember
No, you
vividly
could be
playing
right
it on
too.
my Saturn.
Yeah,
All right,
but
my man, number 4.
phenomenal game, by the way.
Yeah.
I've liked it. Okay, so for my number 4, this is when we're gonna start to get into more of my what the games type of games I played a lot on there. And for number 4, I have Fighting Vipers. Now, Fighting Vipers is a fighting game. It's one. This is when they started getting into a lot of the 3D fighting games like Virtua Fighter, things of that nature. And I didn't actually put Virtua. I put Virtua Fighter as an honorable mention. The reason is because
Same here.
Fighting Vipers has a very special feel and appeal. Like I remember playing with the skateboarder kid and being able to whack people with a skateboard.
Skateboard,
Yeah, exactly. Little things like that they bring into fighting games was I was indulged in fighting games. So to see that, I was really, really excited. It was probably my favorite fighting game outside of Fighters, Mega Mix, and Battle Arena Toshinden, which are honorable mentions. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring them now,
also great games.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it had something like the aesthetics of Fighting Vipers always brought me back because visually, nowadays it would probably look ugly, but back then you're like, wow, this visually looks amazing to me that you're just glued to it. You know what I mean?
It's like back then when you first saw Virtua Racing.
Exactly.
You were like, oh my God. But if you were to see Virtual Racing now, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what Fighting Vipers was for me. So
yeah,
that's why I had to put it number 4.
Good choice for number 4. My number 4 is Resident Evil, the original.
Ooh.
That was my introduction into survival horror.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact, like I said, this was because it was a disc-based system, you can have those video scenes that full. Mm-hmm. So I remember starting that game up and having the intro scene where you're being chased into the mansion. And then that first scene where you turn the corner and you see the zombie turn his head when he's eating the
yes, like, it's so visual.
Yeah, and I still see it vividly in my head to this day. We're talking like 25 years later. Like when he just turns up and looks at you, and it's like, and then if you're playing as Jill or if you're playing as Chris, I believe were the two options that you had. Jill was the easier option.
Yes, yep.
Jill was the easier game. But like basically, people who didn't know, there was easy and hard, Jill and Chris.
Yep.
That was your easy and hard option. But so Resident Evil, introduction into survival horror, introduction into my love of the Resident Evil franchise. A few months ago, I did a playthrough of the Resident Evil 8 demo off of Stadia. Yeah. And like, believe it or not, I played it on Stadia with no issues. It was fantastic.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's my love for Resident Evil has always been there. And that's what kind of brought me into that love of Resident Evil.
For me, unfortunately, Saturn wasn't what brought me into it. PlayStation was what brought me, because I played Resident Evil Director's Cut 2 and 3, and I even played Code Veronica on Dreamcast and all that. But unfortunately, I would say Saturn didn't bring me into it. That was kind of a PlayStation thing, and that was because I played Tomb Raider on Saturn, but it wasn't.
So did I.
Yeah, so but I didn't. But unfortunately, that's what introduced me into the Resident Evil, because it didn't have the same feel. But I feel like visually, it kind of had that whole thing where it drew me into there. But that's because of PlayStation, unfortunately, on that one. So it's not.
No, to each their own. Like I said, I was Sega Saturn, and I was diehard Sega Saturn.
Yeah. Well, I got the PlayStation later, so that's the reason why I wasn't introduced to it. Because the thing is, again, as we go through the list, you're going to see, okay, there's a common thread here. You played a lot of these type of games on Saturn. I'm like, well, the controllers work for it. So
the first analog controller. I know it was ugly as hell, but it worked.
We'll get to that later because it also includes a certain game that's on my list.
I got you.
Yeah. So, should I go into my number 3?
Yeah, number 3.
Okay, so for number 3, a lot of people never heard of this. But when I saw this, it intrigued me to the point I became addicted to this game, and it's called Guardian Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A lot of people don't know what Guardian Heroes was. Guardian Heroes, how do I explain Guardian Heroes? Guardian Heroes is like a fighting game. You had 3 basically tiers you could jump, like not tiers, but like
classes.
You can go into the foreground. No, not classes, but like I'm talking about the actual level itself.
Yeah.
You could go into the foreground to because basically what it was a fighting game that played like Final Fight and Street Fighter, where you had like your quarter moves to do like special moves, but you can also level up your character, but then you can go between 3 planes so you can dodge characters and then fight them within that plane. It was such a game that, like, for fighting fans like myself, that when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I got indulged, like I could level up my characters. I could pick different characters. Wait, I could go behind the planes and still play it like it's a Street Fighter, but I'm playing it like a fun. Like it's hard to explain how amazing it was back then.
A lot of the leveling up of the characters that you see in current Mortal Kombat or the Injustice series is taken from that series, like the whole leveling up your character.
Yeah, like, and I feel like a lot of people don't even know that this game exists, and that's why I was like, I have to put this on my list. I remember playing this addictively because I remember holding the old Saturn controller, and it looked like the old Genesis 6 button controller, but it had like a different kind of feel, like it was more like boomerang feel. And I remember playing.
It had the first one with the shoulder. Or no, Super Nintendo had the shoulder, but it had the shoulder triggers.
Yeah,
as well.
It did. Yeah, it had the shoulder triggers. And see, that's the thing. It felt so good to be able, because I still had my control pad. I wasn't having to use the analog stick like I did in 64, which you didn't really have to in the fighting games. But you had that old traditional controller, but be able to see something where it was like I can go different planes of the level. I can level up my character. I can play it like a Street Fighter and play it like a Final Fight. It was just so hard to explain how great it was. Then I'm sure nowadays it may not play as well, but my God, I was addicted, and that's why I had to be my number 3.
Oh yeah, that's a good choice.
Look it up, guys.
Highly underrated. Yeah, highly underrated.
Yes.
So onto my number 3 is Metal Slug.
Oh my God! Why didn't I put that on my list? Oh my God, I forgot that was a Saturn.
Game. That's even though it's kind of like a throwback to those old running gun games like Contra, but Metal Slug, just like, I don't know, the visual art style of this game just drew me in. Like it had that cartoony feel to it, but it was like violent as hell.
Yeah,
and it was. And if you were playing with that analog stick, the control on that thing was fantastic. Like it was precise controls. Like you gently press the button, he only does one. You press and hold it, he auto fires. Like it had that sensitivity on the control pad. And I think that's what I liked about Metal Slug, was because of that itself. And it was like, once again, it also had the planes. So you're traveling in the background, but then you can move to the foreground. Like you could take different paths. Like it was, and it played in that 3D realm. Like even though it wasn't a 3D game, it gave you that sense of depth, I guess is a good way to put it.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I actually forgot about the Metal Slug series being on Saturn, and I know I played it, but I think the reason I forgot is because I recently just played Metal Slug on PlayStation 4 back before I even like majorly streamed, and me and my friend actually did some Let's Plays of Metal Slug 3 and played through the whole game and everything. And I forgot that it was even on the Saturn. Like I'm kind of mad I didn't put my honorable mention on, because I'm like it's one of those things. Like I'm even in my top 5 maybe now that I think about it, because I think it would actually replace Sonic Art. Which maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. That's kind of hard. That's still
as it's been known now in the RLG Cast universe, you can do a Caps.
Yeah, exactly. I think that might
shout out to Caps.
Yeah,
on RLG
I think
Caps.
that might be my Caps. I might have to throw in Metal Slug on that one because I totally forgot what was on there.
Yeah,
so wow,
fantastic game. Yeah.
Oh,
all right.
Wow. Okay,
see?
So
we're pulling them out the deep cuts today.
Yeah, right. Okay, so number 2 is gonna be a shocker because I was gonna put it as number 1, but then I was like, you know what? I'm a fighting game addict, so I moved it to number 2, and it's not a fighting game. For number 2, it's Nights in the Dreams. Now, I actually was going to put it in number 1, but there's another game that I played on the and the reason I did this is because I played it a lot, but there was one game I played on the Saturn so much to the point that my disc was so scratched up, we had to go buy a new disc because I was playing it too much. So and let me explain why Nights in the Dreams got number 2 though. Still, why would it still go to got number 1?
Go for it.
This is one of those games that you would, first off, this was they came up with the analog controller. It was a big round controller. You got it with Nights in the Dreams. And it was, I remember when N64 came out, they made a big deal about their analog controller. But I feel like the Saturn did it better when it came to analog controller because it was
more responsive.
Exactly. And it fit better too. Like it was starting to show what the Xbox controller came to be. You know what I mean? It was starting to show where the analog controller was right above the control pad where everyone is kind of used to right now. So to see that,
and it had actual triggers as opposed to, and when we get into honorable mentions, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more. But,
well, I remember there's the fat part of the back of the controller too that was kind of, I felt like it was intrusive, but it held controller stand up when you had it on the table. But Nights in the Dreams itself is one of those games that if you go watch video of it, you might be like, I don't understand the greatness of what this game is, but because of the analog stick, if that game was made for that. It was one of those games where
it came with that analog controller.
Exactly, and it fits so perfectly with that game as you traverse through because it was the basic way. How do I explain Knights? It's basically not really it's a side-scrolling game, but it's more of like a 3D side-scrolling game.
Yeah.
The world rotates and you go through these rings, and I'm trying to explain like how do you explain Knights?
It's done by Team Sonic.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that when you try to explain it, it's hard to explain it because I don't know if you have it on your honorable mentions or anything like that. But
Yeah,
we'll
it
get
is
to
on
that in
my
a minute.
honorable mentions. It came
Okay.
close, but it didn't make my top 5.
Okay, so I will just say this real quick because I want to go ahead because I definitely want to see her too, and that reason I want to just bring this up is because it's one of those things when you watch it, you're gonna be like, I don't understand this game, but then when you pick it up and play it, you're like, oh my god! And it's based on these two kids that you're basically like wanting to that was it joined together. I can't remember exactly. It's been so long since I
I
played
think
it.
they're twins.
They're twins. That's right.
A
That's
boy
right.
and a girl, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I wish I can explain it. It's just one of those games that when you see it, it's a little odd, but you definitely have to pick it up one day if you ever can. So
Yeah,
that's why Knights came in at number 2 for me.
absolutely. And the thing is, going back to what we're saying, the Sega Saturn is still to this day one of the hardest consoles to emulate. You won't find a Saturn emulator out there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so hard to emulate just because of the technology behind it.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I even tried to look up Knights late years down the road, and I couldn't get like even my number 1 game. I think it's hard to find a emulated copy because it was an arcade game. Well, we'll get into that when we get into that page. But that's my number 2.
We mentioned this a while back, but you were extremely jealous. The fact that I still have mine that's still plugged in, and I still have my entire collection.
The case,
I still play it. Yeah,
the case. People don't realize they look like CD cases, but they look like oversized CD cases that were like taller than a DVD case.
Not quite a DVD case, but thicker. There was a lot of wasted plastic on those cases. Towards the end of the Saturn, though, and in Japan, they had the small CD jewel cases.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
yeah, the way PlayStation had it.
But I remember I actually had some cases where I either had the game missing or I traded in the game, so I could literally lift up the black part of the case in the inside and then make my own covers and all that kind of stuff for games that are missing, and then you just slap back on there.
Whereas what I did was, I don't know if people may be familiar with this, but I had a CD book.
Yes. Well,
okay. I put all my cases. I still have my cases. They're pristine. They're in a box and they're in storage at my house. But I also have all the games in one of those CD booklets. So I just pull out the games willy-nilly.
Yeah, unfortunately, was more, I still kept them in the actual game cases, and there was a lot of cracked plastic covers and everything like that.
I just, with my collections and stuff that I have, especially one day on my YouTube, I'll do a tour of my basement with all my collection and stuff like that. But I just have so much stuff that I don't have room for everything.
It makes sense.
I just don't have, and I live in a house with a full finished basement. And here I am doing podcasts out of the guest bedroom.
Love it. Okay, so wait. So you're number 2, aren't you?
I'm at my number 2, and my number 2 is another game many people may not have heard of. It's a Zelda clone called The Legend of Oasis.
I never played that. I actually know exactly which one you're talking about. I never got to play it. So yeah, I'm all ears because I actually didn't get
very much like if you've played if you've played the remake on the Switch of A Link to the Past, it has that feel to it. But the thing is, the sprites in this game were huge. They weren't like little sprites. Like the main character took up a big chunk of the screen. It was kind of like an not fully overhead, but kind of like angled overhead view. And it's same type of thing. Dungeon crawler. I think you level up you collect things to level up your health and stuff like that. You use magic. You have to find the 4 guardians, water, earth, that trope to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a prequel to a Genesis game called Beyond Oasis.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't. Okay, now I remember the Beyond Oasis. Okay, that's the one I'm actually thinking about.
Yeah.
Now that I think about
Whereas Beyond Oasis played similar to Aladdin on the Genesis. This was more like a Zelda type of dungeon crawler, like, basically go on a MacGuffin quest to find the 4 elements to save the kingdom kind of thing. Yeah. But the gameplay, the storytelling, the puzzles, like if you've played Breath of the Wild with those puzzles in it, same type of puzzles where you have to solve puzzles, moving pillars, adjusting water levels so you can get a clear path. Like just some of these, like as a 21-year-old kid when I was playing it or whatever, like even I couldn't understand it sometimes. Like, and I was an adult at the time. Like, and this is before like going online, looking up game FAQs and stuff like that. Like, I had a tips and tricks magazine is what we used to use.
Yes, that Game Pro.
Game Pro, right? that was our game FAQs. Now you just Google everything, and it's like, back then you couldn't, and because it was such an obscure game, it was so hard to find anything on it.
See, you're making me think of, because this is not a Saturn game, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because now that I'm hearing that, I remember there was another game called Onimusha that
that was on the PS2.
Yeah. But see, the reason I bring that up is because it had those puzzles. Am I thinking Onimusha? Isn't that the one with the ninja where it has all the puzzles?
Samurai, yes.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I saw that, my stepfather would sit there and watch me like attentively, like, oh my God, it's amazing to watch. But that's my whole point. I never even really, like, I'm intrigued now. I've never even got to play it.
It's definitely worth checking out. If you still have a Genesis and you can find it, I'd suggest Legend of Oasis not a Genesis, a Saturn. Going back to what you're saying about Onimusha was Capcom, so it's kind of like feudal Japan, Resident Evil kind of thing.
Yep.
Almost a little bit of Devil May Cry in there.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So. But PS2, that's another episode.
Yeah, but I had to bring it up because they had those puzzle elements, and it kind of makes me think that's what that similarity in that.
But it was, you know what I mean? But the thing is that the difference is it was bright, it was colorful, like lots of blues and greens and yellows, like it was very colorful.
So like Chrono Trigger coloration, like that bright colors, or more like
Final Fantasy V, Chrono Trigger, that kind of color, but like with full blown sprites. Like huge.
I'm gonna have to look it up now. I'm definitely
go look up gameplay or something. But look up Legend of Oasis. Fantastic RPG. Everybody knows I'm an RPG guy, so.
Well, that's funny you say that because I used to be an RPG guy, but I love how your games are RPG and you're RPG guy, and nowadays I haven't played RPGs in a long time. For me, it's a fighting game guy, which is kind of funny. So
fighting games, it's easy. You pick up and play, and you're done.
Yeah. But it's a matter of becoming really good at them. Now you can
easy to play, hard to master.
Exactly, and that's the one thing I always love doing is mastering them. Which I guess if you're okay with that, can I go to my number one?
Absolutely.
So since we're talking about that, number one for me, and I know a lot of people are like, really, but I'll explain why. I played the heck out of this, and that is X-Men versus Street Fighter. Now, if you're not familiar with it, before Marvel vs. Capcom existed, there was the Street Fighter games, and then there was X-Men Children of the Atom. And we didn't have anything that mixed. We didn't
both get by Marvel Capcom.
Exactly, both by Capcom. And then all of a sudden, they made X-Men versus Street Fighter. I am now playing where I could have Ryu and Wolverine on the same team, have Psylocke and Jubilee on the same team. This game got
mine was always Psylocke and Rogue.
Yes. And see, I wore this game out so much that I'll tell you this: if we ever do a Dreamcast list, which I want to do, you'll see Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on there because it was just like this. You know what I mean? My thing is I liked a lot of fighting games. I actually tried to not make my list five of my list all fighting games, but Saturn, oh my God, the fighting games they had. And X-Men versus Street Fighter was my cup of tea. I played because it was the one time you actually had two characters you could swap out between as well.
And before Tekken Tag Tournament.
Exactly. And so much time went into it to the point where I remember one day put it into my Saturn and then hearing and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
and
those optical drives were not the greatest.
No. And I remember it, like I did it, I'm like, please start. And I'd stop it and maybe turn a little bit and hope that it would play to the point where finally one day after me messing with it, it finally stopped altogether because I'd have to trick it. And Mom was like, do I have to buy you another copy? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you play that game way too much. But if they had achievements, I would have the achievements and then achievements that weren't even discovered or even
You'd
made
have the
in
platinum.
the game. Yes, exactly. So for me, it was my number one. And it's not even just because it's that good of a game. It's just it was addictive. I was so excited to see X-Men in a game alone, let alone be able to fight Ryu and Ken that I grew up with on like Super Nintendo. I died.
Absolutely.
So that's my number one. X-Men vs. Street Fighter. I had to do it.
Just to tag a little bit onto yours, the reason why I don't have any of them, and they'll be in my honorable mentions, is because it's before I get to my number one. I'll just do a quick reason why in an honorable mention is because you had Children of the Atom, you had Marvel superheroes, you had X-Men versus Street Fighter, you had Marvel versus Capcom. Like You had Shumagorath in a game.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And because there were just so many of them, to put them all on my list wouldn't be fair. So I got to clump them together in one honorable mention, along with Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter Zero, like
Darkstalkers.
Like, I mean, there were so many great Capcom. King of the Fighters was on there. Like,
yes.
Like, there were so many that I couldn't pick just one, that I couldn't put any on my list, but they're all grouped together. They're a number 6. But they're a big number 6.
You just literally named every single honorable mention I have on my list. I'm not joking. Right. X-Men Shield Advent, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Virtua Fighter 2, Marvel vs. Heroes vs. Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, Fighters, Mega Mix, and Ballerina Transcendent. Yeah. Oh my God, I love fighting games.
Yeah, right, and the thing with Children of the Atom was because this was around the time I was in university, and they had the arcade cabinet in the common room, and I would play that. Whenever I couldn't play that, there was the Star Trek pinball next to me, and I would go swap between one or the other. And it's like, I wore that joystick. I became a master at Children of the Atom. Iceman all the way. That was my character.
And they never brought him back either. They never brought him back.
That was the only game he was featured in. Remember his intro animation? He'd come up as a cube of ice and then shatter.
Yes.
And he's leaning against his name in ice, Iceman.
Yes. Well, see, the thing is, I will say this. They did bring him back in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the one that's going on Dreamcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as that, X-Men Shield of the Atom was the only time we saw that. And yeah, he literally came up, Iceman, the words on the side. Oh, man. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I can go on and back, on. But enough about that for now. We'll talk more about it when we get to the honorable mentions. My number 1, no surprise, is an RPG. But it's an RPG not anybody has heard of, I don't think. It's called Albert Odyssey.
Yeah, you got me on that one. I had never heard of it.
Same with you. Not the greatest of. It's a JRPG, very similar to Chrono Trigger style. That type of art style to it. The wacky characters. There's one that's like this Birdman. I think one of the first gay characters in the game too.
Really?
Yes, because the Birdman was a gay character. So I think he was one of the first gay characters. I could be mistaken, but in the early 90s, mid 90s, that was not a thing you did in video games, right? So for them to do something like that took balls. And, there was this lizard man. It harkens also styles of Phantasy Star 4, which I absolutely adored. Go back to the Genesis episode. We talk more about that there. He and I on Phantasy Star 4. We do a whole thing on it, but it had that type of feel to it, less science fiction, more Final Fantasy style to it. But I just sunk so many hours that it wasn't just me. It was my sister that played it. It was my brother that played it. All 4 siblings, we all had a save file for this game. That's how much we played. And we had to, the Genesis was mine being the oldest sibling, right? Yeah. I was maybe 20 at the time. And my sister, who's after me, she's 7 or so years younger than me. So it was a big gap. They're 13. My brothers are 9, 10. They're starting to get into gaming, that kind of thing. So for all of us to have a save file on the Sega Saturn of this particular game, that I got so mad at one point that I couldn't pass a part, and my brother did, that I actually copied his save file and continued his game.
Nice. But I'd never heard of that. Wow.
So it's it's by a company called Working Designs. They imported they imported Lunar.
Oh yeah, I thought it was called Lunar.
Lunar. I always called it Lunar, but whatever.
It's Lunar, right?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. So same type of. So it's the same company, right? And it's like you said, it's not so much that it was a great game, but it's just the nostalgia and the memories and the fact that if I didn't have the physical copy still, there's no way I could play it anymore. This game is lost to time.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And that's why I had this feeling. And I was at that age too. It was okay, I'm not going to sell games anymore. I'm keeping everything because we got to preserve this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that Saturn has it's very difficult to emulate. You can emulate a PS2, but you still can't emulate Saturn.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you actually made me think of because I mentioned Fighters Mega Mix, and you made me think of another thing which I'm gonna bring up after we talk about. But that's my whole point. There were a lot of games on there that I'm glad they worked a lot with Capcom and things of that nature. But that's the one thing that I think Saturn burned its bridges is it did not do good on their marketing. But my God, when it came to like the way their games played, it's just I don't know. There's such a love because like I'm not gonna say Saturn's my favorite Sega console all time, but it was one of those things that when I got it, I felt like I had magic in a box. Because when you look at PlayStation and even the N64, visually they're not, in my eyes, never felt appealing.
Yeah.
Saturn looked like it just like was like, okay, this is gonna sound so stupid, but I feel like if we put them all on a boxing ring, Saturn was gonna be the one with the big gloves and the big muscles. I'm like, I'm about to kick your butts. Like I knew, and then maybe because it was the focus on fighting games for me, but it just
it was a powerful, like it was the first, I think it was the first one to have a computer CPU in it. Like it was like it was a powerful system. I think it had 4 processors in it.
Yeah.
Like it was insane. You know how many times I had to change that lithium ion battery in the back of
God, my mom got so scared of that because she thought it was breaking the console. And I did that a lot with my other console. She's like, no, not with this one. This one has discs. Don't do that. You don't know how to. My mom, I'm not breaking anything. I got to replace the battery. And she goes, what are you talking about? She goes, and then she realized that's why I was always getting the batteries that
the large round flat batteries.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say watches because they're bigger than a watch. I can't remember what else they were used for, but I know we had like
I think they use those style, and like I know the NVIDIA Shield remote uses them though. I know,
but like back then though, what did it? Is that the
nothing? It was
because I don't remember why we had one in the
fire
drawer.
Extinguisher. No, not fire. Fire alarms, maybe.
That's what it was. Yeah, because I remember we had it in a drawer, and I remember getting it, and my mom freaked out. But then she didn't see me actually grab the battery. She just saw me opening up the console. She's like, "Oh!" So yeah, it was one little thing that was a little bit tricky, but they also kind of made me proud that I knew what I was doing at that kind of age.
And the thing is, with that, you had to make sure you either removed your external storage before you change the battery, or else your data's corrupted.
Yeah. And I'm glad it was one of those. Well, the thing is, I didn't even know that I had to change the battery until it was actually my mom or dad that read the manual that told me that we're gonna have to change this when it happens. And I don't remember what the reason was. I'm trying to remember for the life of me why I had to change the battery.
You can't access the game because the game clock is set to 12 o'clock.
That's right. Okay. Because I remember doing something to where I couldn't play. Because I think that was actually one of those situations I thought my game was broken because of the X-Men versus Street Fighter where it wouldn't spin. So I thought it was one thing, but that was actually why I had to do that. But
yeah.
But anyway, my point to the whole thing is I know I went off track on that. I can't remember exactly where we went on that one. I don't know. I'm going nostalgia here because I'm still seeing it and just seeing, because like I see other open drives, like, you know, with the PlayStation, how it opened up and everything. But like even the ports for the controller, I remember like nowadays they I think that was the first time that something looked like a USB port.
It did. Like, it almost looked like an HDMI.
Yeah, that's what like it has that look and everything. And I remember even with
the first controller that was metal plated.
That's what I was. That's exactly yeah. So I remember that's the reason why it was so familiar to me, because I remember when I went over to PlayStation that they went back to the plastic ports. Nintendo was still doing plastic ports, even with their GameCube, they were still doing that. So it was a distinct thing that I remember when I was younger, I thought was going to electrocute me. I was a teenager, but still, I thought it was going to electrocute me.
Well, you're thinking metal electronics.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but those are the things right there that make me go, wow. That's why I'll never forget what the console was as a console itself, because it was doing stuff that nowadays we take for granted. And even like if we ever do a Dreamcast thing, I feel Dreamcast is the same thing. Sega. I am such a Sega fanboy because I feel like they did a lot of things that everyone kind of just throws apart because they didn't have the console, weren't familiar with it.
Everybody was like, Sega was the Xbox of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a great system that not everybody, like everyone is like Nintendo, kind of like the way everybody's PlayStation. But there's so much to discover, and that's why I never get into the console wars, is because everything has something for everybody.
Exactly. So, and I will say this: you brought up one thing, and I totally when I thought about, I wanted to bring this up because if you're okay with us going into
go. Let's go ahead. Yeah, so that's what these are for.
Yeah. So I actually like the reason I wanted to bring up some of these is Fighter Mega Mix is a prime example of something that you would never get anywhere else. Everyone talks about Smash Brothers this, Smash Brothers that. They don't realize that Fighter Mega Mix was basically Virtual Fighter plus other things. There was a game called Sonic Fighters that came out.
Yep.
And they actually took one of the characters from Sonic Fighters and put it in Fighters Megamix. But what made me laugh about that game so much was that Daytona USA was a big game on Sega.
Yes, the
and
fighting.
And all of a sudden you have a upright standing car where
with
the
wheels, tires are fists.
Yes, the tires are the fists, and you're fighting, and it's literally like rolling on the ground, falling on its back, and fighting like it's a fighting game. But this was a time when you're like,
it was so ridiculous.
Yeah, but I remember it being such a great thing. That's the reason why I didn't get my list. It was so exaggerated that I felt like a lot of people didn't understand why it was such a great thing. Because in my head, I'm sitting there like, I'm playing a game where it has a character from my Sonic game that came over and is fighting characters from Virtua Fighter. Oh my God, head explosion. And then
it's like in Smash when Kirby's fighting Solid Snake or something.
Exactly.
Or Mr. What's his name there? The guy from Animal Crossing fighting Ryu.
Yeah, exactly. And see, that's the thing. This is before that all happened, guys. Yep. That's the point. And so
Mr. Nook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm Tom Nook. And that's my whole point is, I didn't even totally forgot about Sonic Fighters, even though it wasn't that great of a game, but Megamix is what made me think about it. And even Battle Arena Toshinden, this is like an RPG, another RPG type fighter that uses samurais. Like, you can't explaining that to people nowadays is weird. Like, I don't understand what you mean, but at the same time, it was a revolutionary thing back then.
Oh, and Samurai Showdown, another great Sega Saturn game. Oh my
God. Yeah, well, see, for me, I actually played that first on the Sega Genesis, actually. So
the first one, I think Samurai Showdown 4 was on.
Yep, it was. Yeah. And see, the thing is, I know I played it, but okay, again, just keep this in mind. This is all the fighting games I wrote down, and not even write down Sonic Fighters. I didn't write down any of the other ones that he even just mentioned. But like I said, X-Men versus Street Fighter. If you want to call it Guardian Heroes, Fighting Vipers, Battle Arena Toshinden, Fighters Megamix, Darkstalkers, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter,
all the Capcom games. Then you had the SNK games like King of the Fighters.
Art of Fighting, I think, was on there as well too.
Art of Fighting as well. Yeah.
And so what they don't realize is, for me as a kid or teenager, I was a teenager at the time when Saturn came out. Me as a teenager, Saturn brought me those arcade games. I would go to the arcade and actually put a quarter down to play. You know what I mean? And some of the ones like Battle Arena Toshinden, I don't know if it was an arcade game, but I definitely played it first on my Saturn. But like X-Men Children of Adam, I played the arcade first. I was like, I remember I used to go to the arcade because we'd go to the mall, and I had to go to the arcade to kill time. And I'd be like, "Oh no, why are you so good?" "Oh, I got the game at home on my Saturn." Like, it was so good to be able to say, "I own this game."
That's the thing. That's the thing about the Saturn as well that people didn't realize. The arcade ports were true to the arcade. Like when we talked about in our Genesis episode how one of my favorite games was Altered Beast, and I played a lot of time on Altered Beast or Golden Axe. You played the arcade game, or even Shinobi. You play the arcade, but then you play the home port. It feels like there's something missing there.
Yeah.
But when you see the same visuals on your Sega Saturn that you saw, like, we're talking high res 480p, like I wouldn't call it HD, but it was high res before high res like really took.
Yeah.
And I was playing with the S cable, so I had the high quality instead of the RC, the red, yellow, and white.
That's
plug.
What I had.
I was playing with the S cable with the digital audio, so I got that full stereo sound too. Like my dad with his TVs, he was always big with TVs. So, and the TV was for watching TV. It wasn't for playing video games.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't get that opportunity to have that blessing with it. But like I said, that's the reason when we talked about it, or when you said you wanted to do this podcast, I was thoroughly like, when I was scanning my brain for games, Knights was the only one that came up that wasn't a fighting game. And I think it's because it was so prominent because of its controller.
But it was so different. It was
it was. But that's my whole point, is I'm not downfalling it for any other games. I know it had other stellar games that were great for it, but I think I was just on a fight. I'm still a fighting gamer through and through. But man, the Sega Saturn and into the Dreamcast, my love for fighting games, Sega Saturn said, you know what? we're gonna bring you that love. We know what you like in the arcades. We're gonna let you be able to bring it home. And when I came home, and I felt like I just played this, like the arcade, like outside of me not having the actual joystick, like an actual joystick, like you would the arcade,
which you could buy for the Saturn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have the money because we spent too much on the Saturn itself. But
it was not a cheap system. I think I paid $600 when it came out.
It was my Christmas present with one game, and I had to get the games on my birthday and things of that nature. Like I think it was $400 when it first came out.
Yeah, and that U.S. for Canadian, right? Yeah,
yeah, and in 1993 or 94, I think it was.
Yeah.
That's expensive.
It would be like $700. It would be more expensive than an Xbox One scalped prices or PS5 scalped prices at the time.
So, but again, I like he said, like he said, I would go to the arcades and then come home, and it would have the same graphic capabilities. Everything felt the same outside of me using a control pad. Yeah. But that's the main thing that made it so great is when I went to the arcades, I knew what I was doing and what I was leading into. So it made me better. Like Saturn was the reason why I went into the championships. I don't know if you're aware of this. I actually fought in championships locally on Street Fighter and games like that, like Alpha, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Saturn was the reason, is because I was able to play those same games at home and then go out and play in tournaments and already have all the things, just a little bit shifting them to a joystick from a control pad to a joystick.
But you had the analog stick, which kind of did the same thing.
Exactly. So and that didn't even come till later. So I mean, like when I got that, it was like a bonus. That's the reason why I think maybe even Knights was so big to me, is because it brought me that controller that made my fighting games even better. So I can go on and on. I'm saying go look it up. You'll see why.
Well, we're on the subject of that analog controller, let me bring up Quake.
Okay. Oh wait.
Yes, the original Quake was on Sega Saturn. And
I did not know this.
And that's why I love that analog controller so much, because you're moving in Quake with the analog controller and you have the trigger buttons.
Yep.
And I think that's why I'm more even, and people will say it's heresy, the fact that I play shooters with a joypad. It's because of that Sega Saturn feel to it. I can play with a keyboard and mouse. For me, that's not an issue. Like if I'm playing Warzone with some friends, I'll use a keyboard and mouse. But if I'm playing Doom, or if I'm playing something like even going back and playing like Quake or something like that, I'm still using the controller because it just feels right for me.
Yeah.
I know the response time is not the same, but I feel, because I've done it so much, that I'm good with it.
Yeah, and that's actually going back nowadays, even still to this day, people say they play fighting games with a joystick. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm a control pad.
You need
just because I got so used to it. Yeah, exactly. And I could use a joystick. I mean, it's not like I can't, because again, for me, when you were talking about the joystick thing, the difference between analog and then using a joystick is when you're holding the joystick and analog, it does have a different feel. You know?
Yes, what I mean? It does,
because you're not holding. So that's the reason why whenever I play a fighting game on a console, people are like, you have to use your control pad. It's like, I do much better with it because I know
you're just using your thumb on the control pad, whereas the joystick, you're moving the whole hand.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's the reason why you even said yourself, but when it came to the analog stick itself, though, that was something that helped me kind of introduce both of those worlds. And that's what kind of made that whole thing when transitioning to the control pad to the joystick, made it easier to where I can do it. I still use control pad, but if it wasn't for Saturn, because everyone says N64. Saturn, honestly, in my eyes, was what made me better with an analog stick.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was so much better and more maybe intuitive than I ever think the N64.
I find the original Saturn controller, the 6-button D-pad one, was kind of an amalgamation of the best things about the SNES controller and the best things about the Genesis controller, and kind of merged them together.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they took the shoulder buttons from the SNES controller, because they had the shoulder bumpers, but then they had the 6-button layout for fighting games, which made it a lot easier, because trying to play a fighting game on the SNES or NSNES, when you got to use the bumper button to do the heavy kick, where the Genesis, you just press Z.
Yeah, and that's actually nowadays I switch my controllers like that. Like a lot of people don't realize it, but whenever I play fighting games, I have to switch my controls to where all the heavy stuff that's on the shoulders goes down to the actual like control pad because I got so used to it. Like I'm so glad you actually brought that up because a lot of people don't realize that, and I remember it was my transition because I remember I played more fighting games on my Genesis and my Saturn because they had all the six buttons on the front, just like you would at the arcade where all six there. You were using shoulders, so for me, I felt like Sega understood that as an arcade player, and that's something Nintendo just didn't get a grasp on, to be honest with you. Even though I do love their shoulder buttons, when it came to fighting games, they didn't understand that, it works a little bit different in that way.
It does. It does. Do you got any more honorable mentions in case
No, actually, like I said, it was all fighting games. That's reason I'm kind of interested in hearing yours because mine.
So I got some more RPGs. I got Shining Force 3.
Okay, yeah. See, that's the only one I would say that I was going to put on there, but I didn't, and I'm kind of glad you did because that was a great game.
There was another RPG, Shining the Holy Ark.
No, didn't play that one either.
That was another great RPG. Let's not forget the Prancer Dragoon.
Oh,
started on the Sega Saturn.
I couldn't get a copy of Prancer Dragoon Saga. It made me so sad. I wanted a copy of it, but I don't remember why I couldn't get a copy of it.
Prancer Dragoon was, and anything with Virtua attached to it, Virtua Cop. One of the best, like House of the Dead.
Die Hard, the arcade game. I totally just remember that one.
Which had nothing to do with the movie.
No, it didn't.
It was just called Die Hard with a guy in a white tank top.
Wasn't it the same people that made Virtual Comp and House of the Dead?
Didn't they House of the Dead. I think it was Capcom. Capcom, Sega. I think House of the Dead was Capcom and Virtual Cop was Sega Studios.
Okay, because it felt like kind of like Time Crisis too, didn't it?
Time Crisis, very similar to that.
Oh my God, how am I forgetting those? I totally forgot about
another game I spent a lot of time on was Worms.
Oh, well, no, it's just original Worms. This is
the original Worms, where you would just put in a random, random letter number combination, an alphanumeric combination, and it give you a completely random level, and then you had to blow up a lot of the little worms. I think they just did a brand new Worms for the PS5, didn't they?
They did. It's actually the one where you can make custom levels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot. Like you're bringing up because the thing is, I told you my thing was fighting games. So just to hear, because even as soon as you said Virtual Cop, like all the other ones started.
It comes rushing back. Being a big fan of the XCOM series, Command and Conquer, I played a lot on the Sega Saturn. The first Command and Conquer, Iron Storm was another one that I played a lot.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember. Now, I do want to go back to Command and Conquer. I actually rented it, and I think I was just so confused by it, and I think that's what it was. There was just so much to it, and I think when I rented, there was no manual, so I think that's also why it made it hard.
You need a manual for that game. Yeah. The first Command and Conquer, you definitely need a manual.
Yeah,
that's just before in-game tutorials.
Yeah, by the way, they didn't have that a lot, and I remember there were games I'd rent. If they didn't give you the manual, you were completely lost. And unfortunately, I think Command and Conquer I probably could have became a fan of if I knew what I was doing. So,
it's like here's the game, go play.
Yeah, exactly.
No in-game tutorials. Hold R to fire or no. Here it is.
And there were a lot of games that did that.
And go play.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned earlier Daytona.
Daytona USA.
That was here in Toronto. We had a place called Palladium, where it's called Sega City Palladium.
Oh,
and it was like a Sega arcade. They had DDR, that kind of, but they had this big wall at the end of the thing with all the stock cars and a big screen, and you would do 16 people Daytona racing.
What?
Yeah.
No way. No, I never did anything like that. I didn't even know they made
that. This is like, because now we're my friends and I were all in our 20s, and it's like basically kind of like a Dave and Buster's kind of thing.
Makes sense now.
Okay. So it's very similar to that. Less dining, more arcade.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had a wall. Like the back wall was just Daytona USA, and there were like 16 little NASCAR cockpits, and you would literally race with 16 other people next to you, and it had the full motion car. So if you're driving and hit if you're banking, like the car actually turns. It's like, oh, this thing was this was fantastic. Ask Campo. Campo knows about it.
So this makes me think it's like just a really, really oversized version of the X-Men fighting game that they used to have in the arcades, where it had like the huge screen and then the 4 controllers.
It was not a screen. It was multiple. Think the Wizard from with Fred Savage with all the screens making one big screen. Yeah. But you had, so the one big screen would focus on the main race, and then you had a smaller screen in front of you that you
Oh,
saw your cockpit.
they did that back then.
Mm-hmm.
You were so lucky. I never even knew anything like that existed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it had batting cages too, and I love my batting cages. But like it
Fuck
had
off with
batting
some of
cages.
those.
It had I think it had a VR room too before VR. Like
Shit. The first time I did VR was at a Six Flags, and that's a whole other story. It was a Star Wars game, by the way. My first VR was Star Wars, which
nice.
is, yeah.
But yeah, Thunder Force, side-scrolling shooters.
Yeah.
Let's talk about anthropomorphic animals. You had Bug, you had Gex, and you had Croc.
Oh my God, how did I forget Gex and Croc? Croc used the analog joystick.
Yes, it did. Because it had that, you had to change realms.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It would think of almost like Paper Mario, where you're walking and then the whole screen would turn, and it's so you're walking in 3D, then all of a sudden you're platforming in 2D.
I always said Croc was kind of like the Banjo-Kazooie for Sega. Like it was their platform to try. Like it was the only thing that we had that was like a 3D platformer type game for the Saturn, because we didn't have anything for Sonic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
3D Blast, which I'm not even going to get into.
Yeah, less said about that, the better. It was a dark time for Sonic until the Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure.
And then of course you mentioned Gex. Gex, oh my God, Gex was one of those games that I just liked the character. Like, think of he's not really. I mean, he dressed like James Bond. Yeah, and he had a controller of a controller, but like it was a side scroller. Like I'm trying to think of another game. There's another game I can think of in my head that's kind of like it,
almost like an Earthworm Jim type of.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there's another game I can't think of because it was based on the controls and everything. Of
Vector Man, maybe.
Vector Man might be what I'm thinking of. I know there was another. I can't think of. I'm going to be here all day trying to think of it. But
Bug was the same idea too.
Now, see, Bug I didn't actually get to play. I know Gex and Croc I did, but I never got to play Bug or anything like that. But wow, see, now I kind of wish I did my list and we talked ahead of time. I had the fun game thing, man.
And I wouldn't be missed if I didn't mention the game I got for free with my Sega Saturn was A Clockwork Knight.
Okay. I couldn't remember the name of the game. Was that the one where I had the wind-up toy?
Yes.
I can.
So you're like in a kid's room and you're like fighting all these, and then you had your sword was a key where you actually had to turn like a Jack in the Box to
I couldn't remember what that name was. Because I remember I got that game.
A Clockwork Knight.
Yeah, I remember I got the game, but soon after I got one of my fighting games, and
it fell by the wayside.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. So, but I remember it, and it was such an odd thing. Like because I remember it was like 1994, so I was also becoming a teenager. So it was kind of like that situation where I was like, or 93, it might have been, I don't know, but I was becoming a teenager no matter what. But my point to the whole thing is I remember seeing this game, and it was really weird to the point. I didn't know what to think about it or what to say about it. So of course, when I got a newer game, it got put to the wayside, and I think I even traded it off for like really small amount to like GameStop.
Yeah, it was not a popular game. Now it's fetching big bucks.
See, I wish I would have kept it now.
That was the pack-in game because it was a launch game, and it were very few launch games. It was that or Daytona, and for some reason I went with Clockwork Knight because I played Daytona to no end.
So now I'm trying to think I don't even think I owned it. I think I might have rented. I don't know. I don't because
you may have had the demo. A lot of Sega Saturns came with that demo disc.
And that might have been it. That might have been it. Because I'm trying to remember. Like I don't remember playing all the way through, and I thought maybe just because there was no interest in it. So I heard when I heard it, I was like, oh, okay, now that name sounds familiar, but I'm like, I don't remember how I played it, honestly. So, but it did unfortunately kind of go the wayside for me. It might be a good game. I didn't get to play all the way through it, but
it was a solid. It was not the greatest, but it was a solid platformer.
Gotcha.
It was one of those like 2 hits you're dead kind of thing. So you had to be really, really good at it. Like it was very unforgiving, but once you got the timing and the style of it, then but I'm anything else you want to add to that?
Now now my brain's kind of going everywhere else, but you did name a lot of them that I was like, holy crap. I will admit the whole virtual comp thing really triggered, because I remember there was also that time like when you go, because arcade to home was something I always wanted. So of course, virtual comp or House of the Dead, these are things like you would sit there, like even with
Splatterhouse.
Oh my God. Well, that Splatterhouse is a side-scrolling beat 'em up, but oh my God, that right there. I had 1, 2, and 3, but I remember my first time playing Splatterhouse was on the TurboGrafx 16.
Oh, see, I never had that.
Oh my God, we need to. I will have to talk about that one time. But anyway,
we can do it. I need content.
Yeah, exactly. Then I'm down. But yeah, As far as fillers, and I think you got everything because you mentioned a bunch of games that just kind of triggered light bulbs in my head.
Yeah.
But again, I've already kind of spanned on that. Like I said, when you did Virtual Cop and then the Die Hard game, things of that nature. So, and even like even myself, I didn't realize I didn't put Sonic Fighting on the game, even though it was a horrible game. I still loved it.
It's a game that's near and dear to your heart. See,
exactly.
I think that's why for me the Sega Saturn has that nostalgia factor for me. Is when the Sega Saturn came out, I was already in my 20s. Now, for people who don't know me, I'm the oldest of 4 children, but there's a big gap between me and the younger siblings. So between myself and the youngest brother, there's 11 years between us. So by the time I hit 20, my brother's only 9.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I'm basically an adult, and my family's busy still raising. Like my mom is still busy raising kids, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what's a 20-year-old got to do? He either goes out and parties, or I was a gamer. I went like after work. Like if I didn't go because I used to work early in the morning in my 20s, I would go home. I'd finish work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, play my Saturn up until dinner time, eat, and then go back upstairs and play for the rest of the night until it was time to go to bed.
And I think that's the reason why there's also familiarity for you as well. For me, what's more of nostalgia, like I had I'm not bad memory, but my memory was lost because that was my teenage years. Like we're not too much apart, but I was around 14, 15 years old when that came out. And I remember the life cycle wasn't that good, but when Dreamcast came out, that's when was my early 20s. So of course I put that above Saturn a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I had more for me. And as an adult, I felt like it was ahead of its time. You know what I mean? But see, that's my whole point. Saturn was more the teenager feel. So of course I didn't have my own income coming in. I was based on what I can get. So of course, you know, if my mom knew I liked these type of games, she would pick up those type of games. Yeah. So for me,
I think like the Saturn showed that games aren't just for children. Yeah, you had great like family friendly games. We mentioned Gex. We mentioned you know what I mean, Clockwork Knight, Sonic R, even if you want to mention that. But but it also had those adult type of like, and not adult like in dirty, filthy, like more adult themed. Like you had Quake, you had Hexen, you had Resident Evil. You know, not to mention like all the sport franchises, NHL, Madden, like Daytona, Virtual Racing, so many fighting games, which it appeals to both young and old, right?
Exactly.
So I think for me, the Saturn was that bridging the gap console.
Yeah.
That showed that games aren't just for kids, adults can enjoy them too.
And I remember distinctly, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I even remember the commercial like scaring the hell out of me.
Oh, well, that's all I can remember. Sega!
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't the one Sega. It had some like old dude's face on there, and then a girl. Okay, no, I remember the girl.
The one with the bald dude.
Yeah,
and just staring at the screen, kind of thing.
Yes, and he's like, "You want a Saturn?" And I'm like, "I do."
Oh yeah, kind of like very George Orwell, 1984 type of.
Yes, and it scared me,
but
at the same time it scared me because again I like scary stuff, so it scared me like whoa.
But it intrigued the hell out of me.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, but now I want it even more. It was one of those consoles where because there wasn't much marketing, when I did see that commercial, I felt special, especially by having because my friends would come over, and I remember PlayStation was owned by people. And no one ever owned the last 2 Segas because they basically gave up on it. While I was like, I will never give up on it. I was the type of person that had the attachments for all the Sega Genesis. I had the Sega CD, I had the 32X, I had all those attachments. I had the Menacer gun, all that kind of stuff. And
I had the attachment that you would attach to your Genesis that you could play your Master System games with.
Yes. And see, the thing is, unfortunately, I still had the Master System games, but I barely played that. Like I remember my mom got it for me, and she's like, now you don't have to worry about playing on your Master System, unhooking all your stuff and everything. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to play that no more. I was like,
but you know what? To this day, like maybe we'll do a Sega Master System episode, but the Wonder Boy series.
Oh my God. Yeah. So we could go deep into that because even Alex Kidd, even though it's not as great when you go back and play
Nintendo Switch, Alex Kidd, there's a new Alex Kidd game. Okay, so you know how a few years ago they did the Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap remastered where you can switch back and forth between the old style graphics and stuff?
Yeah.
They did for Alex Kidd. I forgot what it's. I'm going to look it up right now. So this is going on as we speak. I think it's called Alex Kidd DX or something.
Okay, we're definitely
Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX. Basically, it's the same type of like the way they did with with the Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap. So you can switch back and forth between original music and new arranged music, and you can do original graphics or new graphics.
Really? Oh yeah, I'm already seeing the picture. I can't wait to watch this. I'm gonna wait to watch. Oh wait,
yeah.
Oh my god, I could already see it.
Right?
Like, does it even still have like the rock paper scissors? Like everything's in there.
The boss battles are still rock paper scissors.
I'm sorry.
And
okay.
you could change, like, you know how in Alex Kidd everybody thought what was that triangle he's eating? It's onigiri. It's the rice ball from Japan, is what it is. The rice ball. Yeah. But in this one, you can adjust it to whatever country you live, like you want to put it to. Like, for example, if you're playing in North America, instead of the onigiri, you can have a hamburger. If you set your country to England, you can have fish and chips instead of the.
No. Yeah. Okay. I got
guys, go watch. It's.
I'm going to right after this. Oh my god, I'm sorry.
We got us into that Sega Master System. When you mentioned Alex Kidd, I had to mention that to you. Like, Alex Kidd was such a phenomenal series.
But now this is the point I'm making right here. Everyone talks about nostalgia Nintendo. And I again, I'm going to show you guys something real quick. This is my wallet. I carry this around everywhere with me, all right?
Sonic.
If you'll notice, Sonic's on it. This is because everywhere I go, I want to make sure people know that I'm a dedicated Sega fan. Don't get me wrong, I had the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. I had the Nintendo and the Sega Master System. But there was something that appealed Sega. Like, I felt like it was like the stepchild that no one loved. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but it brings so much more rawness to it. Like, Nintendo's like, we're cute and cuddly. And Sega's like, you know what? Screw this. We're going to go a little bit darker. And we're also going to be like a little more appealing to those teenagers. And as they grew, they continued to be like that. Like, listen, we're going to appeal. Even with the Dreamcast, even though I feel the Dreamcast did go for more of a colorful view, they still understood, okay, we have an adult film. So we're going to go ahead and give you a modem and let you connect to the internet. Little things like that Nintendo never even thought of doing. Sega was on the forefront, but still Sega was kind of like, we don't care about you, and was throwing things. Maybe bad marketing, maybe a lot of things like that. But it's like, come on, guys. When you guys go back and look at nostalgia games and everything, understand why Sega was making Nintendo look like crap.
It gave him some good competition for a few solid years.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always gonna be a Sega fanboy. Even though I do love Nintendo, I'm nothing against Nintendo. But again, if everyone says who would win a fight and they go Mario and Sonic, I'm always gonna pick my boy Sonic.
Well, I mean, that's why like now they have the Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. There's no way Mario beats Sonic in a foot race.
When I see Bowser outrunning Sonic, I'm like, come on. This is broken altogether. No, literally, it should be this. They'd be like, on your mark, get set, go, and
Sonic's already at the finish line.
Yeah, he's over there waiting. I'm like, did you guys
He's
even
doing
start yet? Yeah, exactly. Right? We're waiting, tapping the foot and everything. So it's which, by the way, we did. Me and Nikki just did Sonic on Minecraft and did we're doing a whole series on it. Anyway, we're not gonna get into it. Yeah. So
anyway, that's something to look forward to. Are you doing it on yours or are you doing it on RLG?
No, it's on my end and everything because I bought the DLC, but Nikki actually did it with me, and I've already cut the video. It comes out on Friday, so I'm pretty excited about it. But anyway, again, that brings in that's another reason why I'm saying Sonic and just in Sega, general Sega. Like when you asked me to do this Sega Saturn one, I was like, I this is my love. Yeah. And I have to do it. And even though, unfortunately, I don't feel like there were much flagships on Sega Saturn, it was still one of those things that said, listen, we're badass. We're here to stay. Unfortunately, weren't. But
if you like rooting for the underdog, the Sega is the way to go. It's the perpetual underdog. To this day, Sega still makes one of my favorite gaming franchises in the Yakuza series.
Oh my god! And that's one of those things that if you have never played it, you've got. And even the humor in Yakuza, like they understand how to balance everything. It's such.
It has seriousness. It has humor. Like Goro Majima is one of the greatest characters in video games.
Yes. Only thing is, now that you said that, it also brought me up of Shenmue, but that's also a Dreamcast thing.
But that's save that for Dreamcast.
Yeah. I want to.
But I mean, even going back to the Yakuza series, like something I forgot to mention was the Sega Ages collection on the Sega Saturn, which had a remaster of the original Outrun, Space Harrier, and Afterburner.
Which again were other games you would get on the Sega Master System that got improved on Genesis, and they kept it going. And again, these are arcade games that were competing.
And the ones that they released on Sega Ages were true to the arcade.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember the Sega Genesis version was not
a exactly Space Harrier on the Sega Saturn. That thing was phenomenal.
Oh man,
I got another Beast thing. No.
well, it's been a while. So.
It's right. But on that note, Putty, Anything else to add?
No, I just want to say I'm jealous of you having a Saturn, but bravo. I mean, for keeping that for so long, bravo.
We're keeping the dream alive.
Exactly. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that.
Anytime. Puttyman, before we go, want to drop some of your deets?
Just Gamerpotheads, just Google it and everything. You'll find me there. It's pretty easy to find.
I'll have his description down, or have his links down in the description below. And on that note, Puttyman, thanks again for joining me. This was a pleasure. I always love talking Sega. So thank you again for joining us. And thank you guys for joining us. And on that note, guys, keep on gaming.
Peace.